let us start. With permission from the Venerable Bhikkhus, let me welcome all the attendees, the Venerables, as well as our members of our society and Dhamma friends across the world. I can see from even from Australia, from Canberra, they have been logged in, so for a late night waiting to stay up and listen. Thank you. As always, can we please start with Sarana, Gamana and Pansil, and may I please invite our co-patron, Venerable Olandeyananda Thero, to kindly administer the refuse and seal, as always. Thank you, Venerable Sir.
Please say Namaskara.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Panatipata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinnadana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinnadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu miccācara viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Suramire amajjapamadattana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Suramire majjapama dattana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Visaranena saddhi pacchasilang dhammang sadhukang surakkitang kapta appamadena sampadeta.
Bhante. May I first ask all the attendees to please, other than the speakers, to please mute their microphones, please. So welcome to all attendees, and we are all gathered here today to listen to a very popular teacher of the Dhamma and a meditation master to speak to us on the Ogha Tharana Sutta. Now, Ogha, I believe, means flood waters. It always also conveys some degree of turbulence, body of water with turbulence and flood waters, as it were. And Tharana is a verb conveying crossing from one point to another. So this means the sutta is metaphorically indicating crossing the flood waters. The metaphor to indicates, I believe, the thoughts that flood our mind, the thoughts of sense desires and different viewpoints and ignorance and so forth. So how to overcome and successfully cross these Eightfold Noble Path, which is what we are all doing, or at least supposed to be doing, living according to the Eightfold Noble Path. And when doing so, not to get drowned in these flood waters, also not to get swept away by these flood waters, is what the Sutta would, the discourse would teach. And we have no better, I think, speaker than a meditation master, because all these thoughts are in the mind, obviously. And I am so happy and privileged to introduce Venerable Panadure Chandaratana Thero, who really needs no introduction, I think, to many across the world, Buddhists across the world. He is a very popular teacher and a meditation master, a senior monk at the Nissarana Vanaya. And Venerable Sir, we are deeply appreciative of your giving of your time so compassionately to us, and we remember with great gratitude your support to us at the centenary celebrations, giving so much of your time in support, such a background support that you gave that day. Venerable Sir, if you could begin with 5 minutes of guided meditation, please, so that all of us could sort of settle down and focus our minds. Over to you, Venerable Sir. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Manori, and dear Venerable Sir and the others. So as Professor Manori has requested, so we'll first of all spend a couple of minutes spending our time with mindfulness. May you sit in a comfortable position, and you can close your eyes. So this will be a very short meditation session, so you don't need to worry too much or take it as a burden. Rather, we are trying to enjoy the present moment for a while. So while our eyes are closed, we can spend a couple of minutes listening to various sounds available from the environment. So probably you can hear maybe sounds of vehicles, maybe sounds from other people, maybe birds chirping, different things probably you can hear. And these things are coming and going. So we are not bothered by them, and we are not considering them as kind of an obstacle. Rather, we can accept them. We are having an open attitude. So our mind is relaxed, receptive, and again we are quite vigilant. We are mindful. We can listen to various sounds. So these sounds come and go. They quickly arise, quickly passes away. Now we can slowly bring our attention back to the body. We can take a deep breath, hold it for a second, and then release. So like a anchor helping to a wandering ship to stay still, so this body we can use as an anchor to the wandering mind. So if your mind wanders to the past, you can slowly bring it back and put it in the body. Similarly, if your mind start to think about the future, daydreaming, fantasizing, planning, don't encourage that. Slowly bring your attention back to the body. So what we feel in the body is quite ordinary. And those are direct experiences. And we are using the body as an anchor to the mind. Our eyes are gently closed, and we can feel our lips are gently touching. And we may be naturally breathing, keeping our head straight, neck also straight, Shoulders in a relaxed position. Arms may be resting on our lap, keeping our back straight. And probably you can feel some pressure at your buttocks. And certain parts of the legs also touching the, say, chair. Legs are bent and muscles are relaxed. And our foot touching the ground. We are in a comfortable sitting posture. We can take a deep breath, hold it for a second, and then release. Okay, now we can open our eyes. So let's start the Dhamma sermon. First of all, we pay homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Appatittanko ahang auso anayuhang oghan taranti ti. Dear Venerable Sir, dear Dhamma friends, so as Professor Manori has given a very interesting introduction, so we are going to discuss about Ogha Tharana Sutta, which is the very first sutta available in the Samyutta Nikaya. So this is giving a very beautiful message by the Buddha, and there is in one occasion one Devata, celestial being, approached the Buddha while he was staying at Anathapindika's that monastery called Jetavanarama. So after approaching the Buddha, he is asking a beautiful question, kind of a direct question: how, Venerable Sir, you have crossed the flood? So according to this question, Buddha has given a very brief answer, telling appatittanko ahang auso anayuhang oghan tarantiti. So literally it means that by not holding and by not straining, I have crossed the flood. So just by looking at this answer, actually one cannot really understand what the Buddha is meaning. So anyway, he is telling that without struggling and without halting, that he has crossed the flood. Now, as we also couldn't understand, when this celestial being also didn't understand the meaning, so he is asking again, how that by not halting or not being still and not struggling, how have you crossed the flood? Now he wants a better explanation from the Buddha. Now Buddha is giving a better explanation. So he is telling, Yadako ahang auso santittami tadasu sansidami. So if I come to a standstill, friend, then I will sink. Yadako ahang auso ayuhami tadasu nibbuyhami. So if I start to struggle, then I will get swept away. So therefore, without being still, without being struggling, I have crossed the flood. Now after hearing this answer, it seems that the celestial being have somehow understood the answer, and so he is showing his gratitude, showing his appreciation by telling another verse, Chirassang vata passami brahmanang parinibbutam appatittang anayuhang tinnang loke visakti kanti. So he is telling, after a long time I was able to find a person, find a Brahmin, an Arahant, who has crossed the flood by not halting and not straining. Now we need to understand what this really means in this whole discussion. So that is what I am trying to explain as far as possible. So what Buddha has really meant here? Actually, some people say that the Buddha meant about the Kamusakallikānu yoga in the halting part, and the say that straining of oneself is the other part, giving some torturing oneself is the other side. So that is what he meant by struggling. So Attakilamatanu yoga. So that is a one explanation given to this sutta by certain scholars. But on the other hand, from the practice point of view, we can learn a lot from this little sutta, from this short sutta, and kind of a very deep meaning is also we can understand by going through the sutta. So if we consider a typical practice life, suppose you want to little bit develop your mind, so therefore you are trying to restrain yourself a little, and again you want to develop certain amount of mindfulness. Suppose you are practicing walking meditation. Say you are going to a walking path, finding a walking path, and now you start to practice. Say when your left foot is touching the ground, you are noting it as left. When your right foot is touching the ground, you are noting it as right. So it's a very straightforward practice, and you can't even understand where this Ogha Tharana Sutta fit on to my practice. Doesn't matter. Suppose that you are continuing your practice. So as you continue your practice, say gradually you are gaining some amount of mindfulness. Say at the beginning you could only pay attention to say 5 steps, and after a couple of days you are able to keep your attention for 10 steps. Say after several weeks, say you are able to complete the whole walking path mindfully. Now you are doing something, you are in a way practicing, you are practically involved in meditation, developing mindfulness, and to some extent you are successful. Now suppose you are continuing like that. Say you are continuing that labeling, noting left, right, or you are labeling it as, noting it as lifting, moving, placing. Likewise, whatever the convenient way that you have recognized. So likewise you are developing mindfulness. Now this is a little bit of work is involved, and you are developing mindfulness, and if you do like this forever, there is a small situation, a kind of a turning point that you may reach. If you do like this forever, you can't reach the next stage. So this is an interesting point. Probably we might have thought, okay, I am continuing this practice, I am practicing walking meditation with noting, and I don't need to drop noting. And you are continuing with that effort. But there is a situation that once your mind is fairly restrained, fairly mindful, you need to allow some kind of a balancing of effort. That you need to allow concentration to develop. In order for concentration to develop, you have to open up, and you have to balance your effort. Otherwise, concentration may not properly develop, because this noting part, left, right, or lifting, moving, placing, that kind of a labeling, noting that you are using as a technique itself can become a burden. That probably the yogi might even feel it. He may understand, okay, I am continuing with some amount of noting, and it is a kind of a burden. So sometimes people don't understand it. They continue to sort of maintain that noting. So it is true that noting was really helpful at the beginning stage in order to restrain our mind to develop mindfulness. But once we reach certain level of mindfulness, in order to develop refined level of concentration, we have to discard this labeling, noting, and allow mind to smoothly develop mindfulness. In the sense that we have to maintain a very quiet mind, silent mind, in order to further refine our mindfulness and say even clear comprehension. So that is where we have to do some sort of a balancing. So if we continue same amount of energy, then we may not be able to develop refined level of concentration and wisdom, because that gross level of noting actually do some amount of blockage or some amount of hindering of the path. It was actually a helpful mechanism at the beginning, but not now. Suppose now you understood the point and now you are going further with a very silent, quiet mind. Now you are furthering your practice. Now you are improving your practice. Now suppose with a very silent mind you are able to recognize different characteristics. How your left is, how your foot is lifting, how it is moving, how it is changing, how you are touching the ground, and what are the different aspects of that process. Everything that you are doing as a silent observer. So this silent observation is extremely important, so that you are able to understand different aspects of this whole process. Actually, similar thing is applicable even to the sitting meditation, where suppose you do mindfulness on breathing. So at the beginning you may use labeling or noting, but later actually you may have to stop that labeling part, because otherwise it is difficult to come to the different levels of different refined levels of mindfulness and wisdom, mindfulness and concentration, and therefore we need to understand that we have to properly use that labeling. When it is not necessary, we have to remove it, we have to avoid it. And therefore assume that you are able to continue like that, and you are reaching fair amount of refined mindfulness. Now you have fair amount of refined mindfulness, and again mind is fairly concentrated. But now you have to do something as well. You can't simply satisfy with mindfulness. Rather, you have to use that mindfulness in order to develop clear comprehension. Now you have to investigate the object, or investigate whatever the phenomena which you have used to be mindful, which you have used to bring mindfulness. So whatever the phenomena, it may be the breath, it may be the foot, it may be the touching sensation, it may be various sensations throughout the body, maybe different feelings. So now you have to carefully investigate. So this investigation part involves certain amount of effort, certain amount of doing part. So you have to ready, you have to initiate that investigation. There is some sort of doing there. Now you can see slowly there are certain areas that we are involving actively and doing something, and after we come to a certain level, we have to avoid active doing something. We have to let things happen naturally, smoothly. And then we are coming to another region. Then now you have to again little bit of active participation is available. Now if we now connect with Ogha Tharana Sutta, it is not merely halting, it is not merely stilling or not doing anything. So we have to sometimes do something. And on the other hand, it is not continuously doing, continuously struggling, but we have to come to a kind of a moderate kind of effort as well. So there's a kind of an analogy we can understand from that part as well. Now suppose you are continuing your practice. Now as you continue, say now you are observing all the different types of phenomena arising. It may be bodily phenomena, it may be different types of feelings, pleasurable feelings, painful feelings, equanimous feelings. Now you are carefully observing. So as you carefully observe these different phenomena, so more and more subtle aspects of those phenomena going to be available, and you are carefully observing them. And now you are understanding their behavior, how quickly they arise, how momentary they are, how quickly they passes away. So you are carefully understanding. So in order to do that, you can't actually panic or you can't doubt, you can't put your attention to other places. You have to carefully maintain your attention. You have to focus your attention for a considerable period of time onto the area, onto various phenomena which you are now investigating. So with this kind of a say practice, suppose now you are developing yourself and you are getting some amount of understanding. Different insights are now arising that probably you may understand things are impermanent, things are constantly oppressed by this kind of arising and passing away nature, and things are changing as they wish, onto which that I have no control at all, and it doesn't obey my kind of a schedule or my kind of an agenda, but rather they have their own agenda, they have their own different causes and conditions. According to that they are behaving. So likewise you are developing fair amount of understanding. So as you continue your practice, now things start to change. So if you expect things may happen as you wish, then again we have come into a kind of a situation we can't continue our practice, because we had some sort of a preconceived idea that things may happen as I wish, but things may not happen as I wish. So when we reach that kind of a situation, so we have to be little careful not to panic, not to doubt, rather allow things to happen, to take the back seat rather than trying to manipulate things. So we have to take the back seat and allow things to happen smoothly. So as things happen smoothly, now we are passive, we are becoming a kind of a passive observer. Now things are happening and you understand with your continuous observation that they are happening and you are observing, and that gives a lot of understanding, that gives some deeper understanding about the impermanence, maybe the unsatisfactoriness and the non-self nature of various phenomena. Now after you come to a further development, say things start to change. It is not the way you like, but the things are developing, changing differently. Say you develop some sort of a situation that everything becomes somewhat like mixed up. Previously you were able to distinctly recognize different phenomena, various phenomena, but now everything appears like mixed up. It's like a flux. You can't distinguish this is this and this is that. Rather everything very much like mixed, everything appears like flux, and there is no much kind of an interest to look at it. Now you are getting a kind of a perspective of dispassion. Now even here, if you are not maintaining that passive observation, then you are sort of not understanding the practice. So here also we have to be careful not to struggle. You can't struggle in order to recognize distinct characteristics, but rather you have to allow things to mix up. You have to allow things to fade away. So now you can see, even here you are not struggling. At the same time you are not sleeping either. Things are happening. You have a kind of a dispassionate perspective, but you can't go to sleep. You can't simply get up. You can't simply give up. You have to continue. So that continuation is there. You can't simply stop. At the same time, you can't struggle either. You allow things to happen and you are maintaining your this silent observation. So with that practice, now you are further developing yourself. That dispassion is further enhancing. Suppose you are coming to a level, okay, this dispassion is further developed, understanding is further developed, your wisdom is further developed, and time to time your mind experiencing some sort of a sudden jerk even. So you feel like you lost something. You feel like that you have lost the kind of an address, very much like. You have lost the footing. You have lost the establishment. Or you have lost the rope to which that you have hung on. You have lost. So here also kind of a situation, if you panic, if you struggle, if you doubt, then again you are coming back. But rather, without struggling, without stopping, you have to bear it. You have to maintain it. You have to endure it. You can see here also we can apply the Ogha Tharana Sutta, where Buddha is explaining how deeply throughout his practice he has maintained this impartial and very balanced, moderate kind of effort. Not going to struggle and not going to still, not going to simply halt, but maintaining the practice with the proper balancing of different faculties, spiritual faculties. Now, suppose you understood the point and now you are continuing your practice, and time to time now you understand, okay, time to time now mind is developing fair amount of momentum, of wisdom, and when it reaches kind of a threshold, mind simply lets go of everything. There is nothing to hold. There is nothing to attach. There is nothing to maintain mindfulness. There is nothing, any phenomena to focus your attention. So even here, if you encourage doubts, if you become panicked, then you are not doing it properly. Rather, you have to continue. You have to endure. Not to stop, not to struggle. You have to endure the situation. You have to continue the practice. Now, as you continue like this, now mind will understand, okay, there is a kind of a situation where mindfulness is available, but there is no object. There is no place to be mindful. There is no object or phenomena to be mindful. But a kind of a freedom of mind is there. No place to hang on. There is nothing to latch into. And there is no object to be mindful, but mindfulness is there. Time to time you might encounter such. Now assume that with that knowledge you are continuing. Now this understanding may further develop, and this experience may further develop, and more frequently that you may experience it, and more you experience it. Now you got to have further understanding of the Ogha Tharana Sutta. So when you are experiencing that kind of a freedom, not to panic, not to struggle, not to sleep, not to become drowsy, but to be fully alert by still not doing anything. You can't do anything, simply there is nothing to do, but you can't go to sleep. You can't be drowsy. You have to be fully alert. So you have to continue the practice. Here also we can apply the Ogha Tharana Sutta. So the way that Buddha is explaining, how beautifully he has crossed the flood. Not struggling and not halting. Now we have come to a situation, some amount of temporary freedom that the mind may experience, and even there we are maintaining the Buddha's advice. Not struggling, not halting, not becoming drowsy, not getting up, not giving up, maintaining some vigilance with a balanced effort. So as you continue, assume that now you understood, okay, there's a kind of a situation, mind can stay there, but there are no any kind of an agitation, there is no any kind of a phenomena to look at, no objects, but little awareness is there, some effortless awareness is there. So with that, now assume that you are continuing. Now you are somewhat seasoned in this area, and assume that you got an instruction, okay, you got to develop this even in the walking session now. Previously you understood this kind of a state of mind while in the sitting. Now you got to develop this even in the walking session. So you are now expanding your practice. So you are enhancing your practice. Even while walking, you are trying to encourage this kind of freedom of mind. So mind releases everything. No upadana, no holding, no grasping. So kind of a very light-weighted and spacious kind of a state of mind one may experience. You are continuing walking, but not at all with any kind of a labeling or noting. So you are not doing left, right, or lifting, moving, placing. Any of those are not taken at all. And even various sensations you may feel, but you are not driving your mind to look at them. Rather, you allow mind to simply aware of everything. Aware but not grasping. Aware but not driven. Not kind of a, say, deliberate kind of awareness. Rather, a natural awareness. Effortless kind of awareness. Smooth awareness. So you can see even here, so Buddha's advice. You are not struggling and you are not halting. You are not sleeping. You are not drowsy. You are vigilant. Maintaining a balanced effort. Now, assume that you are become fairly seasoned in the practice. Now you are even able to have that kind of a non-grasping state of mind time to time. And you can maintain that non-grasping state of mind for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So now it is fairly registered in the mind. So while you are experiencing such, so what to do? Then you have a question. So what am I supposed to do here? So many questions are asked actually. So when you are experiencing such kind of a freedom of mind, what shall I do? Do I need to stop here? Have I come to the conclusion? Have I come to the goal? Have I completed my objective? Now here also we can remember Buddha's advice. It is not a place to halt. It is not a place to grasp. But this is a kind of a temporary state to recognize different defilements. So you have reached kind of a purified state of mind, but not yet fully purified. So we have to be fairly humble to understand, okay, there are still hidden tendencies available. It is true that I am experiencing some kind of a temporary freedom. It doesn't guarantee that I may have it during the whole life. Rather, temporary freedom I am experiencing. In order to have that kind of understanding, you have to be very humble. If we overestimate ourselves, probably we might even give very high standards to ourselves. If we didn't understand properly this area, then probably we start to struggle. If we didn't understand it properly, this area, probably we might even give up meditation. But rather, applying Ogha Tharana Sutta, that technique, not halting, not struggling. So now we are using this freedom of mind, this clarity of mind, this spaciousness of mind to allow different defilements to come to the surface. How do we going to do it? Now we have to loosen the concentration. So rather than grasping this kind of freedom of mind, rather than having kind of a extreme desire to that, now we simply allow the concentration to loosen and allow defilements to pop up to the situation. It's very much like, say, once you understand some amount of temporary freedom, now you can't simply guarantee that this is available for me every time or everywhere. Rather, this is a kind of a temporary situation depending on our practice, and time to time we may even lose it. Why? We are losing it because still we have latent tendencies. Different anusaya, different tendencies are available in the mind. So time to time they become active, and again the mind go and grasp. So we are not yet fully purified. So we are still in a very vulnerable situation, and we can't really say that I have come to a completion. So we have to be very humble. So we have to allow further continue our practice. So rather than halting our practice, rather than stopping our practice, rather than thinking that I have achieved something, we simply say, okay, this is a temporary situation. There are still hidden defilements. Let me carefully understand them. So in order to do that, you are now continuing your daily activities, and while you are continuing your daily activities, actually you are slowly trying to understand what are the defilements arising in the mind. Because when you are well prepared, when you are fully ready, defilements may not come. Assume when someone is reaching this kind of a situation, say if he is going to practice diligently during his sitting session, expecting to understand defilements, typically any defilement may not arise, because he is quite diligent, he is vigilant, his mindfulness is sharp, so there is no room for defilements to arise. But on the other hand, suppose now you are traveling by bus, many people are there and many shouting, and maybe the conductor is telling this and that. Now you become the situation becomes somewhat unpleasant. Now a little bit of resentment can arise in your mind. Are you ready to understand it as a defilement? Can we remember that we were sitting so enthusiastically to recognize defilements? Now that defilement, not on the cushion which has arisen, but now while on the bus, it has arisen. Suppose you are driving a vehicle and you come to a say what you call a signal light, and now it has red and you are waiting on the queue, and maybe the person who is behind you and making a very loud horn asking you to move forward, but the red light is there. So are you getting a pleasant situation, or are you getting some sort of an agitation? Are you getting some sort of angry thoughts? Are you ready to recognize these defilements while on the road, while driving? Suppose you are talking with the person and he is not really accepting your words, and he is not respecting your words, and he is telling this and that. Probably he might not know the subject, but somehow he is talking, condemning your ideas. So are you able to maintain relaxed mind? Are you able to understand your defilements? Are you getting some sort of angry? Is your mind getting agitated? Is it possible to understand these defilements? So likewise, we need to understand while doing daily activities, there is quite often we may go through different defilements. So we should be vigilant to understand these defilements on daily activities. So therefore it is not that we have stopped the practice. So we have to continue the practice. At the same time, we are not struggling either. Struggling in the sense we are not doing like previously hours of practice, hours of strenuous practice. It is also not there. Now you are maintaining yourself. You are practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. So you are maintaining right view. You are maintaining the proper, say, thoughts. You are maintaining your sila. You are practicing mindfulness, wisdom, etc. But with the attitude of seclusion, with the attitude of restfulness, attitude of relaxation. So it is not a struggle. It is not a kind of it is not a kind of halting, or it is not a complete giving up. It is not that you have completely neglected the practice. You have to continue the practice, remembering Buddha's advice, not struggling, not halting. You haven't yet come to the situation, or you haven't yet come to the, say, the goal. There's a long path to go. There's a long way to go. So we have to be on the ground. We have to deal with others. We have to do various other tasks. So then only we will understand what are the defilements still present in our mind. So you can understand how Buddha is taking us in a kind of a long journey. It is true that we have practiced maybe several hours previously. As a result of that, we were able to develop fair amount of mindfulness, fair amount of concentration, fair amount of wisdom. But now we are using that in practical sense while dealing with various day-to-day activities. And while continuing that activities, actually now we are recognizing subtle defilements and allowing subtle defilements to come to the surface of the mind and carefully tracing them, not feeding them, not being victim to those defilements, but carefully allowing them to happen and allowing them to go, letting go. So it's a kind of a smooth practice. It's a kind of a natural practice. You are not in a deep concentration. Rather, you are in a very natural awareness. You are not struggling. You are not extremely in a doing mode. Rather, you are in a kind of an accepting mode. You are in a balance mode. You are in a natural awareness mode. So you can see Buddha's answer to this deity, to this celestial being, has a very deep practical meaning when we are considering that. So the 4 floods, as Professor Manori informed, so there are 4 types of floods Buddha is explaining. The first one is called Kama Ogha, different sensual desires, and then Bhava Ogha, so that is the flood of sort of trying to become. I want to become someone. And then Ditti Ogha, different types of standpoints, different types of views, strongly holding. And Avijja Ogha, that is the ignorance. So these subtle ogha, these subtle floods, so we have to carefully cross. So by simply struggling we can't do, and simply by resting we can't do. So we have to have a kind of an ongoing path in order to cross the flood. It is very much like, suppose you are crossing a river, so assume that there's a strong waves available. So if you try to swim against the current, it would be very difficult, because the waves are very strong. So your strength may not be sufficient to cut off the waves. On the other hand, if you simply stop not doing, then you can't cross. So you have to use the wave as well as you have to go to the other shore. So it's kind of swimming in according to the kind of in the diagonal, like not directly crossing, rather you are swimming in the diagonal, like. So you are using the wave as well. So it's a kind of a very beautiful approach that Buddha has taken when he is explaining how he has crossed the flood. So you can understand how practical message is available in this Ogha Tharana Sutta, and if we understand this deeply, very practically, we can use this message throughout our practice. With that practical knowledge, we can actually have a lot of encouragement, a lot of inspiration to our practice, and so that we also may be able to cross the flood without stopping and without struggling. So with that note, I like to conclude today's Dhamma sermon. Now I like to open the session for questions.
Please unmute your button if you are to ask a question. I'm sure there are questions. Thank you, Venerable Sir, for that very, very, very practical advice given to a meditator. I would like to first ask the Venerable Olande Ananda wants to comment. Venerable Sir?
Well, Venerable, thank you very much for this very nice and beautiful, very practical explanation of the sutta. It makes it really come alive, and it also sounds that since you're a practitioner, you speak from your own experience. It's not just quoting the text. That is what's very important also. So basically I don't have to add anything to it except for thanking you and Bohoma Pinchit for the sharing of that.
Yeah, Thero Bante. Yeah. Actually, after some time I saw you Actually, I can remember, as Professor mentioned, that I saw you during their inauguration session at Maitreya Hall. So after that day, today only actually I see you, and it's nice to see you, Bhante.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, please? Can you please use the sort of Zoom etiquette and raise your hand, or unmute your button and please ask any question. Anuja, do you have anything to comment on?
And I see that I think Dr. Sanat Mahawithanage is there.
Yes, he's there. I'm also so pleased to see him. Sanat, do you have any comment?
Most Venerable Olandiananda Mahathero, Venerable Chandaratana Thero, very happy to see you and hear you talking. So just to check whether my understanding is also correct, Venerable Panadure Chandaratana Thero, you started the sermon saying that when we started practicing mindfulness, we use our body as the anchor, and then as you progress in the journey, you let the anchor also go away, and finally what remains, what prevails is just the consciousness. So just to check, Venerable Thero, my understanding is correct.
Yeah, we can say so. So basically, typically what we have, the consciousness is always anchoring towards the Nama Rupa. If we go a little deeper, so Vijnana and the Nama Rupa, they have kind of an interconnectivity, and always it is hanging on with the Nama Rupa, and that is how we are continuing. But our practice actually helping us to come to an understanding how vulnerable this Nama Rupa, how vulnerable this bodily phenomena, how vulnerable these different feelings, different perceptions and different formations. By understanding that, so the consciousness slowly giving up this holding. So consciousness slowly leaving aside this grasping. So then actually the typical consciousness, what we call as the Sankata Vijnana or Abhisankata Vijnana, that typically is, just to explain a small idea, to give an example, suppose when we see something, we are not limited to seeing, but we do a lot of constructions, we do a lot of fabrications, we are adding a lot of things. So we have our own likes and dislikes, we have different prejudices, we have our own preconceived ideas, and we are adding all those things to this experience. So we are having kind of a subjective experience. So therefore our mind start to think, our mind start to talk, going on, and ultimately we are getting entangled. So this is the typical situation that we all go through. But the practice actually helps us to unentangle this situation and to understand what are the things that we are adding, what are the things that we have constructed, what are the things that we have fabricated, and how I have colored the experience. So if we are able to understand these additional parts which we have unnecessarily put to the situation, then slowly we can minimize that. At least if we can't quickly stop everything, at least we can minimize it. Then now slowly if we continue, then things may happen, but our inclusion or our coloring, adding, construction, fabrication become less and less. Now we can experience things as it is. Suppose now we are looking at things, we are not coloring them, we are not adding them, we are not fabricating them. They are there, we know them as it is. So that is where Buddha very beautifully mentioned, Ditte dittamattam bhavissati, Sute sutamattam bhavissati, Mute mutamattam bhavissati, Viññāte viññātamattam bhavissati. So you are seeing things and you are trying to restrain yourself just to the seeing. There are hearings, you are restraining yourself just to hear. There are maybe different smells, different tangibles, but we are taste, and we are trying to restrain ourselves just to that. And there may be thoughts also arising. We are not fabricating onto that thoughts. We allow them to come and go. Now this is where we are maintaining that balance. So as even here we can take the Ogha Tharana Sutta into the picture. So if we start to struggle with all these different sense impingement or sense data, then we are doing something. We are manipulating, we are struggling, we are fabricating. So rather doing that, we are maintaining kind of an observation, very equanimous observation. At the same time, we are not sleeping either. We are fully alert, fully diligent. So if we continue like this, then slowly further and further the understanding may develop. So that is where we can say, okay, now we are coming to a region or maybe area, the consciousness is not the typical ordinary kind of consciousness. So ordinary consciousness is where you get involved, you get trapped in, you are sort of entangled, you are holding, you are grasping. So that is the typical ordinary function of the consciousness. But here, kind of a consciousness which is not really participating, which is not really coloring the experience, rather simply experiencing, kind of unparticipated experiencing, effortless kind of mindfulness, simple awareness. So the different terms actually Buddha use to this kind of a consciousness. Since you have used the term consciousness, I am answering in that angle. So Buddha uses different terms to explain this type of consciousness. He is talking it as unestablished consciousness. He is using it as unmanifested consciousness. So appatittita viññāna, anidassana viññāna. So these are the different terms that Buddha uses just to explain. So consciousness is there, but not entangled with the nama rupa, not entangled with whatever the seeings, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, or say thoughts. Rather maintaining that very beautiful balance, very subtle balance, delicate balance, not holding, not grasping, and not repelling. So unmanifested, unholding, not holding, not grasping. So this is a kind of a, we can say, some beautiful balance, again powered by wisdom, vipassana insights, knowledges that one may encounter in one's practice. Don't know, Dr. Sanath, whether I answered your question.
Venerable Sir, can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
This upekka, isn't this that middle thing, that not getting, you see that, you're just watching silent observer, not getting entangled. Could you please explain it in terms of upekka? Is that correct?
Yeah.
You look at it that way?
Sure. Actually, upekka is one part of it, one angle of it. It is not the simple equanimous feeling that we are talking here. Now we know typically when we say upekha, what it comes to our mind is the equanimous feeling. It's different. Say different types of feelings are there: pleasurable feelings, painful feelings, and equanimous feelings. And if we simply limit this situation just to maintain kind of an equanimous feeling, then it is not the real understanding. It is not the simple, or it is not the whole picture. But here, equanimity is true. This equanimity has arisen with wisdom, not merely by maintaining equanimous feeling, but rather by not grasping, one is having equanimity. Now typically, suppose when you are grasping, your mind become somewhat colored with what you have grasped. Now say you are looking at a picture. Assume it is a very beautiful picture. So depending on the likes and dislikes, depending on the way it has presented, our mind also get colored. But here, mind not grasping anything, not holding anything, And as a result of that, mind is having equanimity. So therefore it is a fairly, powered by wisdom. It is true, still it is equanimity. Yeah.
Venerable Thero, Sanat here again.
Yeah.
Sorry, I could not unmute at that time.
Right.
Very well explained, Venerable Thero. I understand. Sadhu, sadhu.
Yeah.
Any other questions, please? Or comments? Well, in the absence of any other questions, then Venerable Sir, much merit to you for having had this given us of your valuable time and such a sort of so well illustrated at every experience. I don't suppose we have to go through each of those experiences, I suppose, but I can quite see in the sitting posture to get there, but in the walking posture to get to that freedom of mind, I think is, of course, beyond my reach, I think. The sitting posture is much easier to intensify and get to that. Anyway, Venerable Sir, thank you very much. And then I think what I gathered is then to use that in real life situations.
Yeah, correct. Yes, correct.
In the absence of any other questions, sir, and with deep appreciation, can we now ask you to please do the transference of merit to the departed? We think of all those in the servants of the Buddha, the founders and the past presidents and all those office bearers and supporters and all our departed relatives, devas, and to please transfer merit. Please.
Yeah, sure. So thank you very much. So with those meritorious deeds that we have accumulated, so let's transfer all the merits to all the past relatives and all the office bearers and whoever in need of merits. We'll recite the traditional verses. Ettavatacha amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavatacha amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavatacha amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Akasattha ca bummattha deva naga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu sasanang. Akasattha ca bummattha deva naga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu desanang. Akasattha ca bummattha deva naga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu mamparang. Idang vo ñātīnaṁ hotu sukitā hontu ñātayo. Idang vo ñātīnaṁ hotu sukitā hontu ñātayo. Idang vo ñātīnaṁ hotu sukitā hontu ñātayo. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo satang samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiyā. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo satang samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiyā. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo satang samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiyā. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.